Hey, this is Writers Row. I'm DC Wright-Hammer, and I brought on a very special guest for this episode. I'll let him introduce himself.
Hello, everybody. My name is David Badurina. I am an author and I do YouTube stuff, and I'm just a dude. And so, hey, and I wrote a book, and this is my book, The Caretaker, which is available on Amazon, supernatural speculative fiction. That's enough. Yeah, that's good.
Yep. Links in the description down below for all of that. And if you like the content I've been putting out on here, make sure to subscribe to my channel down below and give this video a thumbs up. But David, on this episode, to talk about the concept of getting in the heads of our characters that we're writing.
Yes.
So I don't need a big to-do for this. David, how do you get in the heads of your character?
Okay, so I'll tell you a little bit about some of my process as far as these things go. First things first, I need to have that initial idea, right?
Mhm.
And my initial idea for a character is typically based on their mechanics, like how they would move and react to something. Are they clumsy? Are they sly? Are they smooth with how they do things? Are they focused? Are they skilled? Those kinds of things. I want to just I picture as like being introduced to this person for the first time, and then what am I perceiving from that person? Do I get a sense that they're a klutz? Do I get a sense that they're really skilled? Do I get a sense that they're hiding something? All these different things. How does my intuition speak about that particular character? For me, getting the name for the character is critically important.
Really?
I know people that have written an entire book and through the whole book call their character just main character, and then just like did a find and replace to be like, the character's name's actually Bob for apples or something, or what have you. So I find deep meaning if I have the idea for a character, and this is kind of how I've gone through a few characters in my story actually, is like, I'll have a character, I'll research names, and usually names of other other cultures or other surnames or things like that, and I look for the meanings to those names. And I like to have the meaning for the name match something that has to do with that character's personality.
Sure.
So I will look into and see like, this name means truth, and I'll have that as a character that's within the book that is giving my main character some piece of advice that he should absolutely listen to and probably won't. So little things like that, I like to tie it in just to kind of flesh that out. Then it comes time to actually construct that character. And typically the way I started out is I'll write just a couple little paragraphs, things that they would say, things, just how they would go across, if they're in a kitchen, how would they make a cup of coffee? And I'll just write it out. And it's basically like sketching. You think of it as just like, I'm putting in some of the rough outlines. You can tell it's humanoid. Okay. And that's how they work. And then trying to fill in some details. Beyond that, there's another level for me where I really try to understand and try to hone in on the psychology of that character. And what are they truly deeply like? What is it what is going to set them off? What are the buttons that have to be pushed? How can that happen? What is it? I mean, and these are normal questions to ask. What does your character want? What is their end goal? Stuff like that for sure. But I'll start to fill in some of those things to make sure that there's consistent behavior. I want to know, how the cognitive gears in my main character's head work. So I know that regardless of the situation I put him in, that he's going to act true to himself in that situation. And I'm not going to have something that just seems a little out of character for them. They're like, it's a little weird that he did this because he did this so many times before, things along those lines. And then after painting that broad psychological picture, I start to fill in little details and start to hint at those. There's, in my novel, anytime my character keeps a couple of candies in a jacket pocket. And like butterscotch candies, or the crinkly wrapper butterscotch candies. And I'll even mention it through at certain points in the novel where something happens that is out of his control, and he is feeling in such a way of just like he's failing. He pops out a candy and he eats a candy and he just sits there and thinks about it. And I don't explicitly say that he is feeling out of control. Right. It's just, well, this happened. He sits down on a curb and he pops in a candy. and those little mannerisms, I feel like, give all the color to that character and allow me to get into his head a little bit more. And so whatever I can do to kind of feed that psychological profile,
Yep.
so I know how he's going to behave. And then side characters, I want to make sure that whatever he is psychologically, that these other characters are the foil for it and are not matching it.
Mm-hmm.
So if I have a character that is having a very hard time with being certain of himself, then you damn well better believe I'm going to have a side character that is going to challenge him at every single turn.
Yeah.
And then I start to draw the contrast. And now that I've honed in on his psychology in this one, now I can play with the storm that creates.
Yeah.
Because they're consistent. And then here are the reactions. I'm curious to know on you. I mean, this is a fascinating topic because everybody approaches this in such a different way.
Yep. Well, so my first novel is about, it's called Between Two Minds. Like literally, I needed to get inside the heads of not one, but two, and I needed to have them go sort of back and forth throughout the novel in a way that was not redundant. So, I needed them to be distinct, different characters, but I needed there to be an overlap, almost like a Venn diagram of minds. And for those who haven't seen it, that was the whole concept of my cover. That digital brain is the Venn diagram of their minds of the two main characters. And so I had to, my original main character, sort of the main character of the story, the main mind of the story, if you will. I had him, and he just kind of came to me. There's so much of me inside of him, insecurities. He'll see something in the world that reflects on one of his insecurities, and he gets angry about that. And that helps fuel this drive to change himself, to alter himself when, he could live his life the way he is. He was born a paraplegic. He's never walked in his life. And he's craved independence, right? He hasn't just craved walking, he's craved independence. And as a result of that and things that he experiences, he's decided, I'm going to take my mind and put it in a brand new body that works. And so I not only had to get into the mind of somebody in his original body, but what is that like bringing that into a new body that works? And so a lot of that, having that in the back of my head while I was writing the scenes where he's transitioning into this new body is, there's a lot of dream sequences or like visions or flashbacks or things like that. And some of that is like just prose of just like, like vivid colors and a spiral. And then I find myself, and then I have to like sort of interpret. And it became easy to do that because I was experiencing these places his mind was taking them for the first time like he was. So I got to sort of use him as my lens into this fictional mind trip that he was going through, and give subtle hints because on the other hand, are they really dreams or visions, or are they somebody else's memories? That's sort of the overarching question in the book. And so, and I got dinged on this in a few reviews. They're like, why would he ask that question there? Well, was he the one asking the question, or was it somebody else asking the question? And like, I don't think I did it great, but I think I did it well enough for myself. I did it well enough for most of my readers to get not only me get in the heads of my characters, but bring my reader in there with me. And a lot of people are like, you shouldn't write first person, like, because first I can't be this. How can I be this person? But I couldn't write this book any other way. The first book anyway, first person. I had to be in these guys' heads in order to figure them out.
Right. Yeah. I that's something that first person is absolutely great for. Plus, one of the things I love playing around with is just the unreliable narrator.
Right.
And that's a big part of my second book is being able to, can you actually trust what the main character is going through?
Mm-hmm.
And can you trust that they're seeing something so clearly because of the trauma that he had been through before? Maybe you're not sure. And I love that question can actually get posed and you can kind of flesh it out some.
Yep.
For you, do you find that, because you said a couple of things like, that you were going through some of these things as well. Do you find that you do imprint a lot of your experiences into your main character that way?
Oh yeah. And I do it subconsciously sometimes. It just comes out. So one of the unintentional themes in my book with all the characters, it turned out like almost all the main characters had father issues. And I get done with the final edit of my book, and my editor on a call is like, you got the whole dad thing going on in this book, right? And I'm like that couldn't be farther from the truth. No, I didn't put that in there. To quote Austin Powers.
Right.
But I was going through. I was a
That's
new
good.
father when I was writing this book, and I had so many questions for my father at the time of like, why do I feel this way to parent this way, but you parented completely differently? Like,
Right.
and these things were going on in my head, and like I couldn't help but cathartically, therapeutically put that on the page and work it out with my main characters. I mean, I'm not the only writer who does this. Like we all do that,
Of
right?
course. Yeah.
Um,
100%.
but you know what? It allows you. It does allow you. It's sort of this like vortex of like getting out of your head, and you literally are in the heads of the characters, working out your own stuff in a way that is, artistic. It's an artistic craft. It's therapeutic. It's and it becomes sort of the foundation of you as a writer. I think if you can really, you are your characters, like to a certain extent. I mean, we talked, on another episode, we talked about the escape of reading, but the escape of writing, like
Oh, absolutely.
you're just there and suddenly 2 hours are gone because you have been living this other life on the page.
That character is doing the things that I wish I could do in some cases, and I write them that way. And for me, I mean, my novel very much um, has an element of a therapy novel to it because, I started writing it. It came from a writing prompt.
Mm-hmm.
That there's just like a small writers group that I was in. It was just like beyond super casual. Like we kind of ran into each other at a coffee shop and talked about what we were doing,
Yep.
and then decided to do a prompt. And I had a prompt card and a question, and we were like, oh well, let's all write like 500 words about this,
Mm-hmm.
and then go from there. And that's how it started. And then, a couple months later, I'm like, man, it just like it zoomed its way into my head and stayed there. And my brother passed away,
Mm-hmm.
and it changed the entire trajectory of what I thought I was going to do, and
Yep.
actually just pushed me forward. And so the book has so many elements of death and so many elements of just life in general and questioning things and all sorts of stuff. And these were all the emotions and the things that I went through,
Yep.
dragged out into the light. And it was helpful to write about those things. And it was really, it was in many scenes and everything else extremely cathartic
Mm-hmm.
because I'm interjecting things in there between characters that are memories that I have of things that my brother, a story that he told me or something like that. It's all
Yep.
in there,
Yep.
and if somebody knew my exact history and read the book, it'd be like, for crying out loud, like you just basically regurgitated things that you've been through. I'm like, well, yeah, but also I wanted to make it cool. So there's that, I mean, you have to have like
Right.
some other, like,
Right.
there's got to be like, it can't just be depressing,
Right.
like whatever. There's got to be this story, but the theme of this story very much is what I was going through at the time, and so it's easy to jump in my character's head there, And one of the fundamental questions that I had starting this book out is my character is abnormally long lived, right?
Okay.
And so, just it's a supernatural thing. He doesn't die,
Mm-hmm.
and you're catching him at a point where he's about, a little over 100 years into life, but appears as if he's in his late 20s.
Okay.
And I started asking this question because you see all this stuff on media and everything else about vampires and how they're cool and they've been around for 500 years and so on and so forth, like all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, well, what's the downside?
Yep.
What is the psychology of a person who tries to make connections and sees those connections grow old and die and leave?
Yep.
And then how cynical are they going to be in 100 years? From
Yep.
every friendship they've had to see that they've had to witness the entropy of a relationship,
Yeah.
and that person until they're gone over and over. Now, what is that going to do to somebody? How are they going to react when they're in a situation where somebody wants to get to know them?
Yep.
And it's the real downside and it's the dark side of that I really felt so drawn to, and how is that going to affect this character and his relationships, and when he's forced to have to be with another person to accomplish something. You know, what is he going to be like? How awful is he going to be? How confused is he going to be? So these were all the questions that were coming up in my head in order to just get a feel for how my character is going to react with different people and with the different situations and everything else. That's like the fundamental backbone of why he is where he is in the entire story and what he's trying to figure out.
Yeah, and it's funny you mention just your main character. So I'm going to go off on a bit of a tangent on how to get into the psychology of a character versus a bad example. And I'm going to use a Marvel character to do that because I just watched some Marvel movies. I watched The Wolverine, which was released in 2013, and it was terrible because it was very much about sort of just this mission that the Wolverine Logan went on. And that was pretty much it. The whole driving force was we need this sort of mission to happen. And so it just does. Characters put things into motion. It's fairly predictable. There's not a whole lot of psychology, action scene, a little bit of conversation, action scene, etc. I watched it I'm a completist to some extent when it comes to that kind of stuff. So I watched it and it was painful. I then wanted to watch Logan. So I watched it so I could watch the movie Logan, 2017 release. And Wolverine and Logan, they named it Logan on purpose, and you see how someone who's been alive, in this case for like a couple hundred years at this point, his psychology, he's worn down, he's lost those connections, he's very cynical, very much doesn't care, and he's very linear. He has this like, I'm going to do what I want to do now. I don't care about missions. I don't care about saving people. I don't care about this or that. And he gets lured into the mission against his will, and at every point in time he's fighting against it. And like, this is sort of the antithesis of the previous movie with the same actor, same character, and you're getting into it. And spoiler for people who don't want to know the end, maybe I shouldn't spoil it for you. I don't know if you have any desire to see this movie.
Not big on him, no. Yeah.
But at the end of the movie Logan, people fast forward 30 seconds if they don't want to hear this. His last line was, "Oh, so this is what this feels like," and then he dies. And like to go on this roller coaster ride with this character for like 17, 18 years, almost 20 years, with the same actor, and to have all these ups and downs, and then to finally see his acting chops, because he's a super talented person, much less actor. He sings, he dances, he could do it all, and he was sort of typecast into this role. And to be able to send it off in that way, I was inside Logan's head. I was not inside Wolverine's head. I was inside the person, the character. And like, so it was just funny you brought that up. Same situation, and he finally gets relief, and they gave him the perfect last line. They did not screw it up. This comic book movie, they did it rated R. They did it like rough around the edges. He's an alcoholic. He's like on his last leg, and when he finally gives up, like, it was just perfect. And so that's what reminded me.
Thank goodness they didn't end the movie with him being like, see you later, bub, or something like that. That could have been a disaster.
I'll be back, and it could, it could have been anything. And that actually turned out well. The I'll be back, but
it did, yeah.
But no, I think getting into the heads of our characters, there's a psychology there. And so some people will take it to, great lengths. They'll start writing out what does the person wear when it's raining? What's in their pocket when they leave the house? And they start writing this whole profile. And I see you shaking your head already. Some people, that's what they do. Sounds like you don't do that.
I don't do that. As a matter of fact, I try as hard as I can to describe the least amount possible in terms of how my characters look, or anything else. And I just want to leave it up to, I want you to have your own vision. I have my own vision of who would play my main character in a movie. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like, I know who the guy is. I'm not telling anybody. And I don't want to imprint that upon somebody. And so likewise, I don't want to go so far into the description of, the hair and the this and the that.
Right.
I'll say that it's shaggy and unkempt. That's fine. You know, I'll say if it's important to the character, you know, my character always has a canvas jacket that's like just a little missized and things. Because of what he does, he never has pretty much like he doesn't have a wardrobe. Like my character essentially steals things from laundromats because he can't be bothered to go shopping because he doesn't own anything. Like, you know, that's the kind of thing. He's just like, so whatever, you know. But even still, I'll play with that to a great degree as well. You know, in terms of the, like, you know, he found something and it was a shirt. I'll say something about the shirt and he puts the shirt on, you know, and this is something I do in there. There's a word on the shirt that's actually important. You know, it's if you look it up and you see what it is, and then you read the next 2 chapters, you'll understand the significance of that shirt and what happened. You know, things like that. I like to play with those things of description, but you know, I'll definitely hit on mannerisms more than the descriptive end of it. Because I want you to know how he's acting and reacting. I want you to see that I just want to show you that he's shaking. You'll figure out that he's nervous, you know, so it is like the show don't tell. But yeah, on the descriptions, oh man, scenes, yes, but not characters.
A lot of those character profiles, like 90% of that stuff doesn't actually make it into these books, but people want to really flesh out their characters on paper before they put them into the book. And so that's where, like, I finally did a matrix, because I'm writing a fantasy book with, like, right now I've got 5 characters, 5 different points of view. And so I finally wrote a matrix of who they are, what's their who they are, what's their end game, like, you know, what drives them, what's their end game, any other little details about them, not their hair, you know, not their descriptive. Like, I do a little bit of that just to give enough. But yeah, I can't get down to, like, you know, what's the picture they have in their wallet. Like, it's just not, I don't need to be in their pocket. I need to be in their head. So
I'll write dialogue. I'll play with that in dialogue. I'll take 2 of my characters outside of the book, like, and whatever else, sit them at a table together and write a couple lines of conversation. You know, that gives me a sense of who they are. And it also helps me hone in on the voice, because, you know, you try really hard not to tag your dialogue, right? You know, want every line being he said, she said, et cetera, et cetera. But on the flip side, you got to make sure that these characters have a very distinct voice. Because if you don't, it's impossible to follow. It's very difficult. You know, I have another story that I'm writing where it's they're two people that have been adopted, right? They're a little bit older. Parents are gone, but it's this guy who's like 6'8" and just massive. He's a mechanic, and his sister, his adopted sister, who's just a tiny firecracker, right? She won't shut up. So dialogue is like a paragraph here, paragraph there. He just says, yup. And things like that. And so when I wrote that conversation, it was literally that. I'm like, let me just play with these characters, right? So she wrote this whole thing and he wrote yup. And I'm like, you know what? That's it. There it is. Like, that's who they are. And I don't, I can describe that she's short and I can say he's tall because it's just kind of funny. There's a little bit of comedy in it, you know, but that's more important for me, is to nail that, the manner, the dialogue, the way they're talking, all those things, and let that color your view of what they might look like, you know?
Again, get in their heads. You don't have to be looking in the mirror with them. Like, you know, if there's something important to call out, because that, you know, in some stories, their appearance is part of their psychology, a big part of their psychology. But just, you know, balancing that with understanding who they are and why you care about them.
Right. And that's difficult too. It can be hard to have a character that makes bad decisions, you know, because you don't want to, like, you know, on one hand, I don't want a reader to just be like, I can't stand this guy, right? For me, that was Holden Caulfield, right? Like that was was Catcher in the Rye. Like I hated Holden Caulfield, like, and then I got rid of the book and I like just never wanted to look at it or think about it again. And then the Mel Gibson movie came out. It was all about Catcher in the Rye and all that. And so, you know, like I remember, I'm like, this character is just so off-putting to me.
Yeah.
Like I didn't even understand why. I was like 16 when I read it.
Yep.
But on the flip side, I want to be able to show the ugly side of that character.
Right.
I want you as a reader being like, why is he doing that? Like, why is he acting this way? And that's part of the story, and that's part of his psychology. It's just staying true to him, not trying to not trying to placate a reader. If there's something uncomfortable that has to be said, and that character would say it, out it goes.
Yep.
And yeah, of course, I'm coming up with that in my own head, but I'm really just staying true to this character's views do not represent the views of the author. I'm trying to, you know what I mean? But
right.
Like I'm trying
exactly.
to really nail down what they're going to be like, because
Yep.
as humans and humanity in general, we are all flawed. We all have our demons. We all have our skeletons in our closet and all those things. You need to see, if you're going to relate to this guy, you need to see that he can be terrible from time to time.
Yeah, I think we could do a whole video on how to get readers to like the characters they hate. So maybe that's a preview for a future video.
That's a good one.
But I really appreciate you coming on, David. This
Absolutely.
is always good talks. Feel free. Let's pitch your book one more time, and then we'll wrap it up.
All right, there it is. All the stuff that I've been talking about is in The Caretaker.
Yeah.
And it's on Amazon. It's on their paperback and Kindle ebook and the whole thing. Links are down there. So, yep, thank you for the reminder. I appreciate that. So, yeah, please check it out. Check out the reviews. You will see people talking about it. Hop over on my channel. You see part of the process, where I write it and stuff like that. So, and all of how at a snail's pace, book 2 is coming along. So,
hey, but you're a writer. That's all that
exactly.
matters.
That's right.
Really appreciate it, David. Appreciate everyone who stayed this long. We'll catch you next time. Take care.
All right. Awesome. Thank you.